If you've ever found yourself obsessing over Etsy keywords, or tweaking your titles, or playing tag Tetris, wondering if there's just one magical phrase that will finally get your listings seen, you are not alone, my friend. It's one of the biggest mistakes I see new print-on-demand sellers make on Etsy. All of that energy goes into trying to crack the algorithm without ever asking the most important question. Who is this product actually for? Because if you don't know who you're creating for in the first place, no keyword in the world can save that listing. So in today's video, we're going to flip that script. I'm going to show you exactly how to start creating listings that get seen, not just because of your keywords, but because they're built around real demand and a clear customer identity that helps Etsy know who to show your product to in the first place. Now, this is your first time here. Welcome. My name is Mandy. I run a handmade business since 2017 and discovered print on demand in 2022. Since then, I've scaled to over 20,000 orders and more than $500,000 in sales, all without touching a single shipping box. This video is part of a 5-part series where I'm walking you through the exact framework I use to grow a top 1% Etsy print-on-demand shop so that you can start or grow yours with a little more clarity and a little less overwhelm. We're covering my 3 most important pillars of Etsy print-on-demand success: how to get your product seen by the right buyers, how to make them loved through design and connection, and how to get them sold with an optimization strategy that actually converts. So whether you're just getting started or trying to get traction in a shop that's already live, you are 100% in the right place. If you missed the first video, I'll link it below for you. Just make sure you hit the subscribe button and the little bell so that you don't miss the rest, because these next few videos are packed with examples, strategy, and my best tips for helping you finally get momentum in your shop. All right, let's dive into today's topic: how to get your listings seen. And to do that, we're going to talk about this in 2 different parts: how we approach the products we're creating in the first place, and then how those products get visibility in the algorithm. I want to start the conversation by talking about niches and the approach I take with this, because when most new sellers hear that word, they think of broad categories like mom shirts or funny mugs or product focuses like home decor. But in my world as a top seller, a niche isn't just a generic topic or a product type. It's a person, an identity. One of the biggest mindset shifts I made over the years that really helped me when it comes to growing a product-based business is to stop thinking about niches as random categories or generic trends and start thinking about them as customer identities. What actually creates traction on Etsy is when your product is clearly speaking to someone specific: a pediatric nurse, a science fiction loving bookworm, a baseball mom with a senior player. That's a customer identity. When you stop designing for categories and start designing for people, you humanize the process, and it can really help things click. Your listings become more focused, your keywords make more sense, and your designs are more likely to connect. Etsy's algorithm is literally trying to figure out who your product is for and what they're there to buy, so it can show your listing to the right buyers. You don't know who that person is, neither will Etsy. So instead of asking, what should I make that's trending right now, or what product should I make, start asking, who do I want to speak to and connect with this product, and what matters to them? That's the foundation of getting seen. So if we're designing for people, not just basic products, the next question becomes, where do you start? I like to guide new sellers toward 5 core themes that consistently lead to profitable, high-converting niches. These aren't trends, they're rooted in identity, and they are evergreen, which means they work across tons of product types all year long. Here they are. Number 1, professions. People like teachers, nurses, pharmacists, lawyers, blue-collar workers. People love showing pride in what they do for a living. Sometimes at work, sometimes in a group, and sometimes just while out running errands with a coffee in hand on the weekends. Between office accessories, apparel, and keepsakes, professions have a wide variety of scaling options. Number 2 on the list, hobbies and interests. Think pickleball, knitting, reading, sourdough baking is making a comeback, astrology, and even interests connected to roles such as a volleyball mom or golf-loving dad. These are deeply personal for many people and often make for great emotional or humorous design angles. Number 3, pet ownership. Dog moms, cat dads, chicken owners, rescue parents, breed-specific obsessions. Pet people love their pets and love to buy things that reflect that bond. And it's also highly giftable, especially for pet memorials or keepsakes and parents of new pets. Number 4, life milestones or events. Think about moments like retirements, birthdays, engagements, weddings, pregnancy, and moving to a new home. Again, these are naturally giftable, work great for personalization, and are often tied to sentimental keepsakes and emotion, which, as we talked about now, sells. Number 5, personal passions. This includes values, beliefs, and personality traits like faith, feminism, mental health, advocacy, political stances, and more. These types of niches run deep, and people love to wear and share what they stand for. Now, these themes give you a starting point, but they also leave room for creativity and a variety of different angles for scaling. The best niches happen when you take one of these themes and then test out different layers within that theme that are tied to a specific customer identity. For example, not just a book lover, but bookish dark romance girls, or not just teachers, but keepsake gifts for a retiring teacher. Not just moms, but football moms who only love this sport because their kid is playing. See how much more specific and personal that feels? That's what we're going for. And if you're wondering how to actually design for that kind of person, that's exactly what we'll be covering in the next video on creating listings your customers will love. So make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss it. But we're not done here just yet. Now that you've got a few ideas brewing, let's talk about how to validate a niche. Because we don't want to just guess or go with what we feel. We want to find a sweet spot with data that helps support our decision making. Something with real demand that you can also create great designs for and hopefully enjoy the process along the way. Here's how I recommend you start. Step 1, make a list of what you already know. Think about your own life, your job, your hobbies, your pets, your interests, things you recently celebrated, or even the people close to you. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. Just need to start where you already have some insight. Write down a few to start with so that you've got a list to work from. Step 2 then is to head to Etsy and run a search. Type in some phrases related to that niche and look for clues. I typically start broadly first. Maybe your sister is a kindergarten teacher, so type in kindergarten teacher. Or maybe you just celebrated a 10-year wedding anniversary, so you might type in anniversary gifts. Do you see any bestseller badges when you run your searches? Are there any listings with a popular now tag? Take note of any consistent styles or phrases that show up again and again. When you click into some of those listings on the first few pages, do you see any with what I call little red magic words like in carts or recent sales? Those little red words are your friend. They mean real buyers are spending money in that niche and that there's active demand. I like to do this particular part on Etsy because I think it's important to see what's happening in the marketplace and observe customer behavior. I also like to use a tool called Profitry for this as well. As someone who talks about finding demand constantly, I am obsessed with the fact that they have an entire column devoted to demand. So when I run my search on Etsy, I can pop open their Etsy radar tool and see at a glance where there's actual demand taking place. As I'm running these broad searches, I want to see at least a handful of listings in this column for this niche with signs of demand. Don't get hung up on the specifics or an exact number, just clues that customers in this niche are actually buying. Remember, no demand equals no sales. So if I run a broad search and don't see any signs of demand in this column, then I might hold off on trying to majorly scale into that niche, at least to get started with, because the risk in those cases is that there's not enough volume of customers buying in that niche to make it consistently profitable. Now, you don't need a tool to do this part. In fact, many of today's tools didn't even exist when I first started. But I love that Profit Tree helps you see things more quickly at a glance. And this can be a great advantage and really fast track your research process. I've got a link for you below if you want to give it a try. But essentially from here, you can make notes along the way of what you're seeing and if a niche has potential. And if you're working off of that list, put a little star next to areas where you may want to focus as you're building listings. Steps 3 then is I like to go a step further by checking the keyword data in eRank. You don't need to overanalyze, but here's what you're looking for ideally. Is there consistent search volume? Is it seasonal or evergreen, or do you see spikes throughout the year? Just to be aware of. Are there keyword suggestions with lower competition that you could target? This doesn't have to be complicated. It's just about confirming that there is activity in the niche before you commit your time and creative energy to it, and to be able to see if there's additional insights that you can leverage or even some sub-niches that you can incorporate into your listing strategy. When I'm digging into different niches, I start broad when I'm doing that research, and then I create a keyword list right in eRank so that I can star anything that stands out or that I might want to come back to and make sure I use later in my actual titles and tags. As you do this, I want you to keep one important thing in mind. You don't need a perfect niche to get started. You will likely adjust your approach along the way as you continue building out. In fact, I typically recommend testing a few different niches as you get started so that you can collect your own shop data to help you further solidify your decision making over time. For example, remember, start in one of those themes. You might start out with milestones and try some different sub niches in birthdays and anniversaries, or maybe bachelorette or wedding themes. And over time, that data might tell you that some areas perform better for you in your shop over time. And those are the areas that you can then lean into because you've got that data to support your decisions as you continue to grow. Your goal is to validate the demand initially for right now and get that clear customer identity behind it. At this point, it's your entry, and you will have plenty of opportunity to learn and adjust if you need to. So once you've found a niche that has demand, you've seen some bestsellers, check search volume, and you're starting to feel excited, you might get a little voice popping in that says, okay, but isn't this niche too saturated? And I get it. It's one of the most common hesitations I hear, and it often keeps sellers stuck. You find something promising only to talk yourself out of it because too many people are already doing it. But here's what I want you to know. Competition is not necessarily a bad thing. In fact, competition usually means demand. Buyers are spending money there. Your job isn't to avoid competition entirely. It's to refine your approach within it. And when you do that, when you start more specific and really focus on a clear customer identity, that's how you break in. You stand out faster and you start to build momentum. And here's the cool part. As your listings get traction and sales over time, Etsy starts to trust you more. You'll naturally begin to rank for broader, higher volume keywords over time. But it starts by going slightly narrower first. Think of it as zooming in so you can stand out, then slowly zooming out as you grow. Let's say you're looking at the teacher niche. Instead of just plain teacher shirts, you might focus on elementary school teachers, retired teachers, back to school math teachers, last day of school themes, or field trip group shirts. Or take the birthday niche. You don't need to be the millionth person making birthday girl shirts, but you could focus on funny 30th birthday humor on a candle for gifting, or 60th birthday keepsakes, or matching family t-shirts with a first birthday theme. So instead of trying to throw spaghetti at a broad generic niche wall, your refinement gives you an edge. It allows you to reach a specific customer identity, not just hope someone stumbles across your listing. And yes, again, the design itself will be part of this, and we'll talk all about that in the next video when we dive into getting your listings loved. But this is how you get that initial visibility without being afraid of competition or missing out on niches with real demand. All right, so we've made it through refining your niche, you know your customer identity, and you've spotted signs of demand. Now let's talk about the part that so many sellers overcomplicate: Etsy visibility and the algorithm. Because the reality is that most new sellers spend way too much time stressing over keywords, obsessing over exact numbers, tweaking titles over and over again, worrying about whether their search volume is 1,000 or 2,500, or if their listing is on the first page or the fifth. But your Etsy keyword strategy doesn't have to be that complicated. In fact, when you focus on what you're selling, who you're trying to reach, and why they'd want it, you naturally start to understand how a real customer would search for that product. And that clarity is what gets you closer to the right keywords than most people realize. In fact, it's one of the biggest advantages you can have when you're first starting out. So let's zoom out for a second. When we talk about getting your listings seen, we're really talking about one thing. Can Etsy find your listing and feel confident enough to show it to the right buyer? This comes down to two parts of Etsy's algorithm. Number one is search matching, where Etsy scans your title, tags, description, categories, and attributes to figure out what your product is and whether it matches what someone's actually searching for in that little Etsy search bar. And number two is a ranking. Once your listing is matched to a search, Etsy has to decide where to show it. Page 1, page 7? That depends on your shop's performance, your listing performance, buyer habits, relevance, trust signals, and their proprietary algorithm ranking process. Let's walk through both phases, starting with how Etsy decides whether your listing even shows up in the first place. That first phase is all about the search matching. Part of this is about exact keyword matches, particularly with your titles and tags, and part of this is about context that it gets from your description and your attributes. This is why keywords matter, because this is how Etsy knows what your product actually is. The more clearly and concisely your keywords match the customer's search, the better your chance of showing up. This isn't about stuffing in every word you can think of. It's about using the right words that your ideal customer would actually search with. For example, let's say someone searches for tote bag. That's way too broad. Etsy will pull in thousands upon thousands of listings, and yours, if it just said tote bag or something generic like that, would just get buried. But let's say they refine it to floral tote bag. Now we're getting closer. Then that customer might get specific and type large wildflower canvas tote bag. If that's what you're selling and those keywords are in your title and tags, Etsy will recognize that match, and now you're showing up for a customer who's way more likely to click and buy. This is why these long tail keywords matter. Not because they're fancy or advanced, but because they reflect how real people shop when they're closer to making a decision and know what they want to buy. And when you've done the work to define your niche and know your customer identity, these keywords become so much easier to leverage. You're no longer guessing, you're just describing your product the way a customer already would. Where do you find these keywords? I personally leverage some of the research that we've already done in eRank as a starting place. Remember how we were looking at specific niches and validating that on Etsy? You've already got a solid foundation of keywords from that work you've already hopefully done. As I mentioned before, I like to create keyword lists right inside eRank to keep things organized and streamlined while I search, so that when I'm ready to make my title and tags, I've got a starting place. From there, I lead my title with the most relevant description of the product, like our floral tote example. And then I also incorporate any additional keywords in my title and tags that are relevant to the item and the niche. I'm thinking about what it is, who it's intended for, and potential holidays or occasions related to giftability, where I can leverage title and tags, but also some of those categories and attributes as well. As you're validating demand on Etsy, this is also the opportunity to peek at keywords that competitors are frequently using. I personally include a mix of the specific niche keywords that I've researched, as well as broader, sometimes more competitive keywords that can help give your listing greater visibility over time. Remember, the goal here is not to just have a random long run-on list of a bunch of repeating keywords. Most search engines, Etsy included, consider that spammy and not like the canned ham variety. I write mine as long phrases that make sense based on how a human would read them, and I try to minimize repetitiveness as much as possible. Again, this is more art than science. Don't overcomplicate it, and sometimes you can always test it out on different listings as well. Let's take a look at another example. Let's say you've created this as your listing, a personalized football mom sweatshirt with names on the sleeve. Remember, your title should start with the most relevant keywords and should be written in a way that a customer might logically type into a search bar, which also means it should sound human and not just gibberish. So the beginning of my title for this would be something like personalized football mama sweatshirt with kid's name on sleeve. And then because I know that a customer in this niche might search for things in a couple different ways, I'd also add the phrase custom sports lover sweater for football mom to cover my bases. Your tags might include football mom shirt or custom football gift or personalized sports. Your job in phase 1 here is to build a listing that uses clear, specific, relevant keywords in your title and tags. Etsy's algorithm will then mix and match keywords to try and get your listing matched up with a customer search. But what happens next? In phase 2, then, we get into ranking. So once your listing is matched to a customer search, Etsy decides where to rank it. This is what determines whether you show up on page 1 or buried somewhere on page 17. Etsy looks at a combination of performance and trust signals. You might hear these referred to as the ranking factors. Here are some of the key ones that Etsy talks about directly in their seller handbook. These are not things that I've just made up out of nowhere. Number 1 is keyword relevance. Your keywords still matter here. If you've optimized well for phase 1, you're already off to a great start with ranking. Next is a combination of shop, listing, and customer service quality. Etsy favors shops that feel complete. So this includes things like filled out policies, good reviews, quick shipping, and a strong customer service. Think of these as like trust factors. Recency is another ranking factor. So new or recently updated listings often get a small temporary boost. This is why batching and uploading listings consistently can really help. Listing engagement is another one. So when a buyer searches on Etsy, Etsy's goal is to help them find items they want to purchase. To do this, Etsy Search looks at how well a listing converts over time to determine whether buyers are actually interested in it, which boosts that listing's engagement rate and placement in search results. And finally, shopper behavior. Etsy customizes results based on what buyers have searched, clicked, or purchased in the past. So no two search result pages are exactly the same. This is also why searching for your own listings and comparing the results over time or across devices isn't an effective way to determine where your listings are actually appearing in search, since the results you see are just a small slice of a much bigger picture. This is why I am constantly telling people to stop trying to find your listings on Etsy. It is futile. And just because you see it on page 1 or page 5 or page 10 doesn't mean that that's where your ideal customer is seeing it. So spend more time focusing on your research and the products you're creating and the people that you're creating them for, and less time obsessing over where they are on Etsy. It might take a little while to build up some momentum as Etsy learns your listing. There are so many factors that can go into this, including your niche, your designs, and more. This is why testing, patience, and consistency are vital. There are also a lot of factors in Etsy's algorithm that we just can't control because Etsy doesn't fully share every single aspect of how the algorithm works. It's proprietary to Etsy, but there are areas of optimization within your listings in your shop that you can control. And we'll talk more about that when we talk about getting your listings sold in the third pillar of this Seen, Loved, and Sold series. But for now, just know that when customers start clicking, buying, and leaving reviews, Etsy sees that it's a high quality listing, so it begins showing it more often and ranking it higher, even if it's for slightly broader and more competitive searches. And that's ultimately what Etsy is doing here. It's testing, learning, and adjusting your listing's visibility based on how it performs. It's constantly asking, who is this for? How are shoppers interacting with it? Is this worth showing to more people? So your job at this point, help Etsy do its job better by building listings that are relevant to what a customer is actually searching for, clear about what the product is and who it's for, and create it with a real buyer in mind, not just a generic trend or phrase. This is the entire foundation of this seen pillar. Getting seen on Etsy isn't about ranking for every keyword or obsessing over the competition. It's about showing up in the right search at the right time for the right customer. And that starts with knowing what you're selling, knowing who you're selling it to, and validating that there's real demand for it. When you do that well, your strategy becomes so much clearer. You're not guessing at keywords or chasing trends endlessly. You're writing complementary titles and tags based on how your ideal buyer would naturally describe the product they're already searching for. And that clarity, that's what gets your listing seen, both by Etsy's algorithm and by the human on the other side of the screen who's ready to click and buy. So to recap, getting your listing seen starts long before you ever upload a product. It starts with clarity. Clarity around who you're targeting, clarity around what they're searching for, and clarity around how to build listings that Etsy can actually match and rank in search. You've now got the foundation of how Etsy's algorithm works, how to find and validate niches, and how to stop relying on generic keywords and start showing up for the right people at the right time. And this is just the first piece of the puzzle, because getting seen is only step one. So in the next video, we're going to talk about how to get your listings loved. What actually makes someone stop scrolling, click into your listing, and think, I have to have this. We'll talk about emotional connection, design strategy, and how to create products that don't just show up in search, but stand out and convert. Trust me, you don't want to miss it. So if you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe so you're the first to know when that next video drops. If you are looking for guidance on specific niches within those 5 themes that we talked about, I have a Passions to Profits playbook that you can check out below. It's available on its own, or if you are in either of my Pod Essentials or Simply Thrive membership, you already have access to it. In this playbook, I dive into over a dozen specific niches across these themes, as well as design and optimization strategies. I'll link all of those details for you below. In the meantime, stay focused, my friends, keep taking action, and never stop pursuing excellence in your business. Thanks for watching. I'm so glad you're here, and I'll see you in the next one.